Hey everyone, Mr. Sujano here, your source for gaming, tech, emulation, and open source news. Let's get started. Alright, we'll kick things off talking about PlayStation Vita emulation on Android with Vita3k, and Vita3k just got a nice new update. So at the time of filming, Vita3k Android Release 10 is the latest version. We've got bug fixes, performance improvements, and even more. They fixed a crash on Android 14. There's graphical fixes for double buffer, fixing the rendering in Terraria. They fixed some Android-specific crashes. They've implemented a synchronous shader compilation, significantly reducing stutter caused by shader compilation. They say, though, at the cost of temporary graphical glitches. And they've sped up shader compilation time by about 2 to 3 times. There's also shader performance improvements, and they fixed some performance regressions from version 9. And on top of that, they've rebased the Android version with the PC version, and this allows FIFA to go in-game. It fixes graphical issues in 2D Ubisoft games, like Child of Light and Rayman. It allows Tearaway to go in-game, Spider-Man to go in-game, Killzone to go in-game. It fixes GPU crashes in Spider-Man. And there's performance improvements, and they fixed graphics in Spider-Man. This is a very nice update for Vita3k on Android, and I'd argue that Vita3k is off to a very strong start in 2024. Vita3k on Android is 100% free, and I'll drop a link to it in the description below. And speaking about PlayStation Vita, next up we're talking about a PlayStation Vita port. And someone has ported Soul Calibur over to the PlayStation Vita, and it's looking really good. If you wanted to learn more about this project, I'll drop a link to the GitHub in the description below, and feel free to check it out. Version 1.0 just released. And speaking about stuff that's just released, next up we're talking about PlayStation 1 emulation on Android with Duckstation. And there's a brand new release of Duckstation on the Google Play Store. So as for what's new, as if this emulator couldn't get any better, we've got performance improvements, disk changing for bin and queue from scanned games, post-processing shaders, GLSL and reshade, enhancement compatibility improvements, and a new, faster recompiler. It's nice to see Duckstation updated on the Google Play Store, so you don't have to go to their website to pick up the latest APK. Moving on, and we're talking about multi-system emulator Mednafen, and we talked about Mednafen just the other day when it received a brand new update. And today we're talking about MedGui Reborn, which is a front end for Mednafen. So at the time of filming, version 0.124 has just released. We've got a number of bug fixes, there's some cosmetic changes and brand new features. So there's a cosmetic change here on the cheat manager. They've added support for the PS1 BIOS file that's been extracted from PS3 firmware. And they've added preliminary support for a custom CSV game list. MedGui Reborn is 100% free, it's open source, and I'll drop a link to it in the description below. Next up, we're talking about Atari 2600 emulation with Gopher 2600, and Gopher 2600 also got a brand new update. So version 0.28.0 has just dropped. We've got a number of bug fixes, some accuracy improvements, and a really nice improvement for the paddles. The user input is handled more frequently, meaning finer paddle control. And speaking about Atari, next up we're talking about the Atari 400, and a mini version of the Atari 400 has just been unveiled. It's called the 400 Mini, and it's releasing on March 28th. As for the features of this thing, it'll output video at 720p at 50 or 60 Hz. There's 5 USB ports. You can save games, thankfully. You can rewind games as well. There's 25 built-in games. You can load your own games. They say it's compatible with external controllers. And there's also some overlays. They also say the 400 Mini will emulate the whole 8-bit Atari range, including the 400, 800, XL, and XE series, and the 5200 home console. Interestingly, the 400 Mini appears to be exclusive to Amazon.co.uk, but it also appears like you can ship it elsewhere. It includes that joystick, it includes an HDMI cable, and it includes a USB power lead, but no power brick. I don't know why these things don't include power bricks anymore. Anyways, it's priced at £99.99, and let me know if you think it's worth it in the comments below. I've got no idea what emulators they're using in this thing. And speaking about emulation, next up we're talking about Devil May Cry Peak of Kombat that just released on Android. Anyways, Daniel noticed something very weird and he sent me this screenshot, and I can't believe what I'm seeing here considering Capcom owns Devil May Cry. But in the game notice, it says PC players are recommended to use LD Player 9 emulator. Really? Now, although Nebula Joy made the game, Capcom owns Devil May Cry, and Capcom has been notorious for taking a very strong stance against modding and cheating, and people playing the game in any way that Capcom hasn't authorized. So it's weird to see emulation be recommended. And speaking about Capcom, next up we're talking about Capcom. And this is an update to yesterday's video when we talked about Capcom installing DRM on some older games of theirs. One game in specific was the 11-year-old Resident Evil Revelations. Anyways, here it appears that some previously verified Steam Deck games from Capcom are no longer working on the Steam Deck thanks to their DRM. Unfortunately, whether or not a game is going to work with this brand new DRM is hit and miss. Some people are saying games don't boot anymore, and some people are saying they finished games with no issue. Fortunately, this DRM that Capcom installed to prevent modding and cheating in their older games has been reverted, at least temporarily. They say due to an issue observed with the latest update released, we've reverted the corresponding update. We apologize for the inconvenience caused, and once the issue is resolved, we will re-release the update. Thank you very much for your patience and cooperation. I would say to resolve the issue, you just don't install the DRM. It would make things nice and simple. Moving on, and we're shifting from some older games to some newer games. And here's a game you may want to keep your eye on. It's called Former Dawn, and it's an action RPG for the NES and also PC. It's being created by Something Nerdy Studios. It hasn't released just yet, but I've got my eye on this one, and I really like the sprite animations. Everything's really nice and smooth. Moving on, and we're talking about Mario vs. Donkey Kong. And if you didn't know this one already, Nintendo is remaking the 2004 GBA version for the Nintendo Switch. It's releasing on February 16th, and it includes a few new worlds, new enemies, and even more. I don't know about you, but on the GBA, this game was perfect for very short bursts of time. If I had maybe 5 minutes or so to game, it was nice to boot up a level or two and play it. Let me know your thoughts about this one in the comments below. Next up, this one is real quick. We're talking about Elden Ring and the Steam Deck, and Elden Ring just got an update patch 1.10.1. And they say here, easy anti-cheat update to support the SteamOS update. Thank you for making this game still work on the Steam Deck. Next up, we're quickly talking about the brand new Dualsense for the PS5, dubbed the V2. This is an interesting change here. It's an update to extend the battery life on the Dualsense, and it's also a little bit smaller than the existing Dualsense. Don't be scared of the price. It says $90 or $89.99 if you want to be specific, and that's because it was listed on Best Buy Canada. It has since been taken down. I think they were a little bit too quick to put it up. Anyways, aside from the extra battery life and the slightly smaller dimensions, there's no mention of stick drift. So I'm assuming everything else is going to remain the same. The pricing will remain the same between the V1 and the V2, and I'm assuming the sticks are also going to drift just like the V1. Next up, we're quickly talking about Android, and if you've ever wondered what that green little robot is called, it does have a name. It's not that exciting though. So according to Google themselves, it's called the Bot, which is a little upsetting. I always thought it was called Subscribe to Mr. Sujano. Next up, I've got another quick one and arguably a little bit more fun. This is GodotOS. It's a desktop UI created in Godot, and you can have fun with it in your browser if you wanted to. This was obviously created in Godot. It's 100% free, it's open source, and just meant to mess around with and have some fun with. I'll drop a link to it in the description below. And speaking about fun stuff and also quick stuff, next up we're talking about Super Mario 64, playable in a browser. I've got no idea how long this site is going to be around for, but I'll drop a link to it in the description below in the event that you wanted to learn more about it. Next up, we're talking about Denuvo, but arguably in a good way. It appears that Square Enix has removed Denuvo from Dragon Quest Treasures. Let me know your thoughts about this one in the comments below. If you've got the game, did you notice a performance increase after this removal? Moving on, and I've got another quick one for you, and another fun one. If you wanted to see Mortal Kombat 1, but the characters replaced by Pixar characters, I'll drop a link to a very interesting video in the description below. It's hilarious, and this mod is absolutely fantastic. I mean, it's hard to watch without smiling. Next up, we're talking about a brand new operating system for some retro handhelds. It's called PlumOS. It's powered by Jealous. and it's available for the RG353P, MVVS, and RG503, and even more. Now, personally, I have not had a chance to try this one out yet, but it is on GitHub. It is 100% free and open source. And version 0.1 just dropped. I don't even know if this thing is in English. If you've tried it out, let me know in the comments below. And speaking about handhelds, last up here we're talking about the Ayaneo Next Lite, and we talked about this one yesterday. This is a budget-friendly handheld, or at least it's supposed to be. They're calling it cost-effective. It's got Hall effect joysticks. It's got a 7-inch screen. And yesterday, the website said it was running SteamOS, which I found very interesting. Well, today we've got some more information here. This thing's powered by one of two CPUs, the AMD Ryzen 5 4500U or the Ryzen 7 4800U. It looks like it's going to have 16 gigs of RAM and 128 gigabytes of storage for the Ryzen 5 and 512 gigs of storage for the Ryzen 7. As I just said, it's got Hall effect joysticks, but it also has Hall effect triggers. It's got a 6-axis gyroscope, and at the bottom here, it's still saying it's pre-installed with SteamOS. However, there were some people who contacted me with a very keen eye, and I want to say thanks for that information. Because if we take a look here, it does say Ayaneo handheld comes pre-installed with the SteamOS gaming system. And it does say pre-installed SteamOS built for gaming, but there's also a little star after gaming. And at the bottom of this section, which I completely missed, there's some text that almost blends in with the background. So if we go on ahead and zoom in on that text, it says, note, the pre-installed SteamOS is adapted and optimized by Ayaneo based on Hollow iOS. So it's not truly SteamOS. This whole thing is entirely misleading, and I kind of wish they would change the wording. Now, I'm not hating on Hollow ISO. Hollow ISO is based on SteamOS. But Ayaneo is basing their operating system on Hollow ISO, so it's even one further step removed from SteamOS. I don't know why they're calling it SteamOS. I'm not going to lie here, I'm kind of surprised that Ayaneo didn't go with Chimera OS for the next Lite. To me, it would have made way more sense. I would argue it would require a lot less customization and configuration to get working well and maybe result in a better user experience. I mean, Chimera OS is 100% free, it's open source, and maybe a viable option if you pick up one of these devices. To cap this off, the device starts at $299, but I don't know what the subscriptions means. Let me know your thoughts about the Next Lite in the comments below. But anyways, that is all I've got for you in this one. Straight to the point, all stuff and no fluff. We talked about a bunch today. Let me know your thoughts about absolutely any of it in the comments below. If you liked this video, leave a like. If you didn't like this video, leave a like. Hit that subscribe button, check out my other videos. Don't tempt fate, save your state.